What's going on, my friend? You are listening to Real English Radio, the best podcast for those who want to learn some real spoken English in a practical way. Now, if you want to get access to complete transcripts of every episode, as well as PDF vocabulary guides explaining the advanced words, phrases, and expressions in every episode, then just click the link in the description and subscribe on Patreon. Now, in a recent episode of this podcast, we talked about a simple way to make small talk more effectively. And in today's episode, we're going to talk about another part of conversations that a lot of people struggle with, and that is awkward silences. That's right, my friend, that dreaded silence that all of us experience at one time or another. Now, many of us interpret this silence as an indication that something is wrong. Either we're boring, or they're boring, or someone's uncomfortable, or there's nothing else to talk about. It's always something negative. But the reality is that silence can not only be pleasurable, but also a useful tool when making conversation with people, especially ones you don't know very well. Now, the clip I'm going to share with you today is of a young man talking about awkward silences, specifically when on a date with someone. But what he says can be applied to any conversation in any context. So I'm going to play the clip for you now, and you'll see what I mean.
What to do if you're on a date and the conversation goes silent or fizzles out. So here's the thing, man. A lot of dating coaches, they would tell you that it's your job to keep the conversation flowing and it's the man's job to keep doing all of this stuff. Let me explain something to y'all. Conversation is a two-way street, okay?
All right, let me stop here and explain a couple things. The first one, he says, what to do if you're on a date and the conversation goes silent or fizzles out. Now, when you hear go silent, you probably get the idea. It just means to stop making noise, to stop talking. You're having a conversation, blah, 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 and then it's silent, right? Now, when he says fizzles out, this phrasal verb essentially means to lose energy or excitement or momentum. Now, what I want you to imagine is having a can of soda, and then you crack the can of soda open, and you pour that soda into a glass. When you initially pour the soda into the glass, you're going to hear this tss. You're going to hear that sound. And that sound is a fizzling sound. The bubbles are fizzling. A bunch of tiny little bubbles just popping very rapidly. But eventually, that sound gradually dissipates. It goes from that to and then it becomes silent. All the bubbles are gone, right? So that's what you can imagine when you hear somebody say fizzle out. Initially, there's lots of energy, lots of momentum, lots of right? But gradually it just and now it's quiet. So think about that in the context of a conversation. You guys are talking, and then things go silent. The conversation has fizzled out, like a can of soda. So that's what you can keep in your mind when you hear somebody say something fizzles out. Typically, the energy or the momentum just gradually dissipates or disappears or gets lost. So then he goes on to say, a lot of dating coaches would tell you that it's your job to keep the conversation going. It's a man's job to keep doing all this stuff. But let me explain something to y'all. Conversation is a two-way street. A two-way street. Now, figuratively speaking, when we say this, what we're saying is whatever we're talking about, which in this case is a conversation, requires effort from both parties involved, from both people involved. Because a two-way street is a street on which half the cars travel in one direction and the other half of the cars travel in the opposite direction. And the two lanes that they're driving in are divided by typically two yellow lines that you are not allowed to cross over. A one-way street is a street on which every car is going in the same direction. You cannot go in the opposite direction on that street. You can only go one way. Those are the literal meanings, right? But when we say something is a two-way street, a conversation or a relationship or whatever we're doing is a two-way street, it means not only I, but you also need to contribute effort or energy or whatever it is. You understand? So conversation is a two-way street. You shouldn't be the only one making an effort to keep it going. The other person should also be making that effort. That's what he's trying to convey.
What to do if you're on a date and the conversation goes silent or fizzles out. So here's the thing, man. A lot of dating coaches, they would tell you that it's your job to keep the conversation flowing and it's the man's job to keep doing all of this stuff. Let me explain something to y'all. Conversation is a two-way street, okay? If you out with a girl and the conversation fizzles out or it just reaches a dead end, which sometimes happens, right? Let's say I'm out with a girl, we getting drinks at a bar, we out, maybe we eating our food or whatever. Sometimes the conversation kind of fizzles out and y'all just eating or y'all drinking and y'all just chilling for a little bit and things get silent.
All right, one more thing I'm going to explain from this part. So again, he says conversation is a two-way street. If you're out with the girl and the conversation fizzles out or loses momentum or goes silent, or it just reaches a dead end, that's natural. So a dead end, which is another reference to streets and roads. A dead end is what happens, or it's the place where sometimes you'll drive down a street and you realize that you can no longer progress. You can't go any farther. The street just ends. You have to turn around and go back to where you came from. Find another way to get to your destination. You can't keep driving down that street because you reach the end of the street and there's probably trees or a barrier or something that keeps you from moving forward. Now, when you think about that figuratively, a dead end is just a place where you can no longer progress. That's why sometimes you'll hear people say, I'm working a dead end job. What they're saying is there's no room for progression. There's no room for growth. I'm going nowhere in life with this job. It's not going to get any better. If I want my situation to change, I need to change directions. I need to get a new job, start a new career or something like that. If a conversation hits a dead end, you just reach a point where there's nothing else to talk about. You guys don't know where to go from here. There's no more progress being made. You understand? So what he's saying is that's natural. Sometimes a conversation fizzles out or you guys reach a dead end, and that's totally fine. So let me play that again.
Let me explain something to y'all. Conversation is a two-way street, okay? If you out with a girl and the conversation fizzles out or it just reaches a dead end, which sometimes happens, right? Let's say I'm out with a girl, we getting drinks at a bar, we out, maybe we eating our food or whatever. Sometimes the conversation kind of fizzles out and y'all just eating or y'all drinking and y'all just chilling for a little bit and things get silent. This the thing, guys. It is not your job to keep this thing going. Just as much as you have the ability to keep the convo going and being like, what do I say to keep her? What do I do to spark the conversation? She can do the same thing. You want to know why a lot of women don't do it? Because a lot of women don't be thinking about how to impress you all the time.
All right. So he says, this is the thing. It's not just your job to keep the conversation going. You shouldn't be sitting there thinking, oh, how do I keep her interested? How do I spark the conversation? And what you need to understand is she can do the same thing. And again, he's talking about dating, but you can apply this to anyone, any conversation. The other person can do the same thing. But again, he's talking about dating. So he goes back and says, you want to know why a lot of women don't do this in conversation when they're on a date? It's because a lot of women don't be thinking about how to impress you all the time. So what I want to explain here is what linguists refer to as the habitual be. It's a very common feature of Ebonics or Black English or African American vernacular English, whatever you call it. And we use this sentence structure to describe something that happens habitually, something that happens regularly. So when he says a lot of women don't be thinking about how to impress you all the time, all he's saying is a lot of women typically don't think about how to impress you. Normally, they don't think about that. They do not have the habit of thinking about that, or they don't be thinking about that. You understand? Now, I don't necessarily recommend that you use this sentence structure because for a lot of people, depending on their cultural background or the dialect of English they speak, you might come across as somebody who is uneducated or of a lower social class, because Ebonics or Black English or whatever typically is seen as a lower class way of speaking. We're seen as a lower class of people historically. So again, I don't recommend you speak that way. Obviously you can if you want. I just want you to understand what's being said when you hear somebody talking like that. I don't be thinking about that. They don't be doing this or we don't be doing that. It just means we don't have the habit of saying or doing or thinking that thing. So again, you want to know why a lot of women don't stress or make an effort to keep a conversation going? It's because a lot of women don't be thinking about how to impress you all the time. So let me play that again.
to keep the convo going and being like, what do I say to keep her? What do I do to spark the conversation? She can do the same thing. You want to know why a lot of women don't do it? Because a lot of women don't be thinking about how to impress you all the time. But yet here you are thinking about how to keep her, and you scared that she's losing interest. So you trying to do anything to grasp at straws.
Okay. You're trying to do anything to grasp at straws. What we mean when we use this idiom, to grasp at straws, it essentially means to make a desperate attempt to achieve a particular goal, whatever the goal may be. And the key thing to focus on is the fact that you are desperate. So what I want you to imagine here is standing on a cliff or a balcony or something high up in the air. And imagine you're about to fall off of that cliff or off of that balcony. Now, typically you try to grab a rope or the railing on the balcony. You try to grab something to keep yourself from falling. So imagine you grab all those things and none of those things work. And the last possible thing you can grab is a fucking straw. And just in case you don't know, a straw is that thin plastic tube that we put into a glass or a bottle to drink liquid. So imagine grabbing or grasping at a fucking straw, thinking that's going to keep you from falling off of that cliff or off the balcony. You got to be really desperate to be grabbing fucking straws to keep yourself from falling. Now, that may not make the most sense to you if you don't speak English. I'm just trying to paint you a picture to imagine literally what we mean when we say grasping at straws. Now, figuratively, as I said, it just means you are making a desperate attempt to achieve whatever it is you're trying to achieve. You've probably tried all these other different things. Nothing's working. So you're so desperate now that you'll try anything to achieve this goal, which in this case is to keep the conversation from dying. You're so desperate. You're just like, what color are your toenails? And yeah, they got some nice wallpaper in this place, right? You're desperate at this point, just saying anything to keep the conversation from dying. That's what he's talking about.
She can do the same thing. You want to know why a lot of women don't do it? Because a lot of women don't be thinking about how to impress you all the time. But yet here you are thinking about how to keep her, and you scared that she's losing interest. So you trying to do anything to grasp at straws. Guys, when I go on a date and things fizzle out, if the conversation just died for a little bit, that's okay. I'm so confident in myself that I'm not thinking, oh, is she losing interest? Is she, what's going on? Am I losing her? Do I need to? Because what a lot of you guys start doing is chasing more and saying more stuff, and you feel like you the one that got to break the ice. Now, if you naturally think of something to say, you just naturally think of something to say. But don't feel like it's your job to break the ice and keep her entertained. You ain't no damn jester. We ain't tap dancing for these bitches. That bitch can say something just like you can. And to be honest with you, that's what'll happen. When I'm out, I'm so confident that I'm not losing the girl regardless. And even if I do lose her, who the hell cares? That's how my mindset is.
All right, buddy. So this guy, he goes on to talk about his idea. He's saying if you go on a date and things fizzle out or you reach a dead end, you don't have to be afraid of like, oh, is she losing interest? Or what should I do? How do I break the ice, keep the conversation going? Because it's not your job to keep someone else entertained. You ain't no damn jester. You ain't tap dancing for these bitches. So let me explain those last two sentences here. You ain't no damn jester. That's the first one. So the first part I'll explain is the phrase ain't no. This is another common feature of Ebonics or Black English. And what we're saying is are not or is not. So when he says you ain't no damn jester, all he's saying is you are not a damn jester. Just another way of saying the same thing. And again, I don't recommend you speak that way because you'll probably be seen as a bit less educated. For a lot of people, this is just bad English. But obviously for us, it's not. It's our dialect and our way of speaking. You understand? So when he says you ain't no damn jester, you are not a damn jester. And if you heard the episode about how to use the word damn naturally, then you'll know that in this case, the word damn is functioning just as a intensifier. He's just emphasizing what he says next, which is jester. So when he says you ain't no damn jester, he's saying you are not a jester, but he's saying it emphatically. He's putting emphasis on that. You understand? And just in case you don't know, a jester was the guy that back in the days when we had kingdoms, and you'd have a king and a queen sitting in this luxurious room up on some type of pedestal. And down at the bottom of the pedestal, down there on the floor, there'd be this guy dressed in this clown-like outfit. And his only job was to keep the king entertained throughout the day. He might tell jokes or do weird dances. I don't know what the fuck he did, but his job was to keep the king entertained. That was the jester. So he's saying, you ain't no damn jester. It's not your job to keep this other person entertained. We ain't tap dancing for these bitches. And so when he says that, we ain't, again, that word ain't. When he says we ain't tap dancing, what he's standard American English, we would say we are not, or we aren't tap dancing for these bitches. Now, tap dancing, literally speaking, it's that form of dance when the people put on those special shoes that have thin metal plates on the bottom of the shoe. And they literally tap their feet in this rhythmic, artistic way. And that's the form of dance. So if you search tap dancing or you look on YouTube, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. But now figuratively, in the context of what this guy's saying, when we say tap dancing, what we mean is simply performing. So what he's saying is you don't need to dance around and perform and do all this ridiculous shit just to keep someone entertained. That's really what he's saying. Stop trying to act in a way that pleases or impresses the person you're talking to, as if you're tap dancing on a stage doing a performance for a crowd. Because that's not your job. This isn't a performance. It's just a conversation, which is a two-way street. So you ain't no damn jester. We ain't tap dancing for these bitches, right? And if you heard the episode about how to use the word bitch naturally, then you know what he means when he says bitches. He's talking about women. So again, you ain't no damn jester. It's not your job to entertain or perform for anybody. Like, conversation is a two-way street. All right, let's keep going. And I don't know if y'all can hear the fucking jet plane in the background flying over my place right now, but if you can, excuse the noise, ladies and gentlemen. We're gonna keep going.
To break the ice and keep her entertained. You ain't no damn jester. We ain't tap dancing for these bitches. That bitch can say something just like you can. And to be honest with you, that's what happened. When I'm out, I'm so confident that I'm not losing the girl regardless. And even if I do lose her, who the hell cares? That's how my mindset is. That when I'm sitting there and things get quiet, I sit there for a little bit, and the girls that I go out with, they start breaking the ice. So tell me about this, because you put them in a position to think about, oh, am I losing him? Yeah, that's how I want it to be. Is she losing you? Stop thinking about if you losing her or how to keep it going. Let things run their course. Be confident in yourself. If you can be confident when it comes to silence, there ain't no more awkward silence, because the awkwardness is only there because you feel it up here in your mind. You know what I'm saying? What's awkward for you ain't awkward for another person. So if you confident in yourself, it ain't awkward. It's just part of the conversation. Sometimes you ain't always talking, and sometimes things get silent. It's just part of it.
All right, my friends. Now, regardless of how you may feel about this guy or the delivery of his message, he does make a valid point about the art of conversation and human interaction. Now, in his video, as I said, he was talking specifically about making conversation while out on a date with someone. But I'm going to talk about making conversation with anyone in any situation, because the core idea here is that there's absolutely nothing wrong with a bit of silence during a conversation. Therefore, you really don't need to avoid it. But first, let's talk about why silence is so awkward, or even sometimes shameful for so many people. I think it's because many cultures around the world emphasize the importance of being sociable or expressive or as extroverted as possible. When you're around other people, you're expected to interact and be capable of maintaining a conversation. As I mentioned in episode number 90, why are you so quiet? This social conditioning often leads people to assume that something is wrong with you if you either can't or don't have something to say constantly. We internalize the idea that an interaction or conversation is only good if every moment is being occupied with lively dialogue. And consequently, we develop the fear of being judged for not knowing what to say or simply not having anything to say. We fear being perceived as awkward, nervous, or just boring to the people around us. So we end up feeling the need to perform or constantly prove our social competence by always having something to say and avoiding silence at all costs. In those moments when the conversation does go silent or fizzle out, we become much more self-conscious and aware of our own thoughts, feelings, and insecurities. And without any external dialogue to fill the silence, our internal dialogue gets louder and louder, and we start to wonder if the other person is judging us, or losing interest, or feeling awkward in our presence, which only adds to the pressure to quickly say something and occupy the silence. And many of us also interpret silence as an indication that there's a lack of connection between us and the other person. If they stop talking or the conversation fizzles out, it must be because they're not interested in me. If they don't fill every moment with noise, they must be a boring person, and I don't want to talk to boring people. And this idea is increasingly relevant now that so many people are addicted to their smartphones. Because as we all know, the constant consumption of short-form content and the stimulation we get from it has trained us to expect everything to be instant and constant. Every moment of boredom is now occupied with a 30-second video. And if a particular video doesn't hook us in the first 4 to 5 seconds, there's always another one that will. The stream of entertainment, or noise, is instant and never ending. And after a while, we become incapable of sitting in silence without something to watch or listen to, even when we're alone. So when we're sitting with another person and there's a brief moment of silence or no one has anything to say, we feel that something's missing. But I think we need to shift our perspective on silence and see it in a new light. Because the truth is that silence is not only natural, but also very beneficial. Being silent gives you time to think more deeply about what someone has said to you or whatever you're going to say next. This increases the chance that you actually understand what someone is trying to say and that you come up with better ways to respond. Your words also hold more value when you're not constantly trying to fill every moment of silence with chatter. People who never stop talking are often making lots of noise, but never really saying anything in particular. So it's very easy to get lost in the constant stream of noise and tune them out completely. For example, if we're having a conversation, I'm trying to tell you this idea and I'm saying all these different things, idea 1, idea 2, idea 3, idea 4, and I'm telling you what I did yesterday, I'm telling you what I did tomorrow, I'm telling you what I'm going to do, I'm telling you what I'm thinking about, telling you what I'm feeling, I'm telling you what I'm saying, I'm telling you all this different shit, you're going to get lost in all that. But if I slow down and I really try to explain my ideas slowly and clearly, if I tell you something, if I make a point, and then I let you think about it, if I make a statement and I let you think about it, you're naturally going to pay a bit more attention to what I'm saying, because after every idea or every thought, there's a pause for you to think. I'm giving you time to process what I'm saying. And by speaking in that way, you want to know what I'm going to say next. This is why a lot of public speakers tend to speak relatively slowly, and they use silence thoughtfully. They pause very frequently to make sure you hear, process, and understand what's being said. They're not just rambling endlessly, because eventually you just stop listening, or it'd be coming at you too fast to process everything. You'd forget half of what was said. It's the same reason that people who write speeches or books or any form of text write a first draft and then a second draft and then a third draft and a fourth draft, because they end up removing all the shit that's not necessary. So the idea here is to be economical with your words if you want them to hold value. That's what I'm saying. People just talk and talk. What I'm saying is it's a simple question of supply and demand. The more words you use, the less value each word has. Speaking economically. So by thoughtfully using silence, by saying only what you need to say, by taking a moment of silence to think about what you want to say next, to form your sentence or your idea properly, whatever you say is going to be more valuable and more interesting. And I'm speaking in very general terms. There's tons of different kinds of conversations. Sometimes they are lively and it's rapid fire, just bam, 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 bam. Other times they are slow and thoughtful and provocative, you understand? So don't take this as like a golden rule. I'm speaking very generally about how you can use silence or even just brief pauses to become a better communicator, a better speaker, and also just get comfortable with silence in general. Because silence doesn't just give you a chance to think and reflect, it also gives the same opportunity to the other person you're speaking with. I've had many conversations in which someone told me a story or a personal opinion, and instead of responding with the first thing that came to mind, I just sat there in silence. And the reason it's good to do this sometimes is because we listen to ourselves when we talk, even when talking to another person. So if you give people a moment to actually hear and reflect on what they've just said, they might have something interesting to add to it. And even if they don't, that's fine, but you've given them a moment to think about it. I mean, it's really not hard to wait a few seconds before responding with your own question or comment. And on top of that, embracing silence also leads to a major reduction in anxiety and an increase in self-confidence. Because as the kid said in his video, a conversation is a two-way street. So if you can let go of the idea that you need to be constantly performing or contributing to the conversation, constantly being the one that is coming up with new things to talk about or taking the lead, you will realize that there's no need to be anxious and you can just go with the flow. And what's also interesting is that by having self-confidence and being comfortable with moments of silence, you might actually help the person you're talking to relax and let go of the need to perform as well. Because we as people tend to feed off of each other's energy. So if your energy is awkward, anxious, and insecure, that's what people will feel. But if you're calm and present and self-confident, that is what people will feel. So I suggest that you start using silence to your advantage. The next time you find yourself in a conversation and things go silent, or the conversation fizzles out, you can do one of three simple things. The first one is to pause and reflect. After someone says something to you, they make a comment, they tell you a story, they share an opinion or whatever, and you don't know exactly what to say immediately, just pause. Just sit there and think about what was said. There's no rule that says you can't do that. There's nothing wrong with doing that. If you need time to think, then sit there and think. Think about what was said and or what was not said. And that kind of gets into how to listen to someone properly. We'll talk about that in a different episode. But think about what was said or either what was not said. And you can either dig for more information by asking more questions or making provocative statements, or then you can share your opinion once you have one. Instead of just saying, yeah, wow, that's crazy, like you don't need to do that. Just be quiet. Just be quiet and think. Use your brain to think about what you just heard and respond appropriately. The next thing you can do is just redirect the conversation completely. If you're not interested in what was just said, or you feel that the discussion of a particular topic is coming to a conclusion, simply think of something else to talk about. Anything, really. Doesn't matter what it is. But if you feel the conversation is dying and you don't want that to happen, instead of trying to force more dialogue about a topic that has already been discussed, talk about something else. It's probably not going to bother people the way you think it will. Because maybe you don't want to be rude by just changing the subject completely. But I'm talking about when you realize, okay, we have nothing else to say about this topic. So the conversation is going to die if we don't talk about something else. That's what I'm talking about. So feel free to just redirect the conversation completely. Most people won't mind as long as you have something to say. And if they're not interested in whatever you just said, they might redirect the conversation too. Because again, it's a two-way street. And not everyone is going to be interested in everything you have to say and vice versa. So you can just keep changing topics until you guys find something that you want to talk about. And if that doesn't work, the final thing you can try is to just sit and wait. If you truly have nothing to say or want to give the other person a moment to think about what they've just said, you sit in silence. And if you reach a point where neither one of you has anything more to say, you can't find anything new to talk about, then the conversation's just over, bro. It's really no big deal. So to reiterate, you can either pause, think, reflect, and respond to what was said, or you can redirect the conversation completely, or you can just sit and wait. 30 to 60 seconds of silence is not a big deal if you realize that it's normal, and if you realize that it's better than just saying shit just to occupy the silence. And if it turns out neither one of you has anything more to say, then the conversation is over and you move on with your day. It's not that big of a deal. It's really not. The more you practice this, the more comfortable you get with silence, you'll realize it's actually going to help you make conversation because you're not so fucking nervous. You're not so anxious all the time. Just constantly trying to think of shit to say. You'll be much more present in the conversation, and you go from thinking, I hope they like me, I hope they think I'm interesting, I hope I think of something interesting to say, to the mentality of, let's see how this conversation goes. It sounds simple, but I'm telling you, bro, if you make this shift in your mindset and your perspective, even if you don't have better conversations, you are going to feel better when having conversations. So again, the main takeaway here is that conversation is a shared responsibility, and a lull in a conversation isn't a problem that needs to be fixed. A moment of silence, or things reach a dead end, or if the conversation fizzles out, is not a problem that needs to be fixed. There's nothing wrong. In fact, as I said many times, pauses and silences are not only normal, but beneficial, especially when talking to someone you don't know very well. So rather than feeling the pressure to constantly entertain or keep things flowing, just embrace the moments of silence with confidence. A few seconds of silence are not a failure, but just an opportunity to reflect and observe, or even let the other person take the lead. And this is what creates a natural balance and allows other people to contribute to the conversation equally, without feeling like you have to carry the whole conversation, or you're the one that has to tap dance and be entertaining. So just stop trying to force things and you will feel much less anxious.